my channel. Today is the next episode in the series of building the Aedes Ars Rural Village, and today is the day that I finally start putting the ceramic bricks on the church. In the last two episodes, you saw me put together the cardboard backing walls for this church. You can see the size and shape that the finished building's going to be, but I've really been looking forward to starting to put these little ceramic bricks on. And a quick side note before I get started, I like to work neat and organized, and if you saw my unboxing video for this, all of the bricks came in these big bags that were not sealed, and they were easy to dump. So what I did is I transferred everything to plastic containers. These had been jugs of trail mix, and after I ate the trail mix, I just repurposed the containers to hold this stuff. And then I also put the flat walkway tiles into this tin, and then the arch pieces I'm keeping in their separate plastic bag just so that they don't get lost. This should be a quick episode, which is only going to cover step 3. And in this step, they have you put the arches above the windows in the bell tower, the arch on the side of the church, and then the individual pieces of stone that make up the arch on the front entrance of the church. I find it interesting that they have you do this before putting the bricks on, but hopefully there's a good reason for it, and I would imagine that that has to do with making sure that the arches are properly aligned over the windows, and if need be, you could sand down the bricks that match it height-wise. At least I think that's how it's going to work out. This is the first structure of this kind I've ever built, so this is all new to me. So you can see that this bag contains a variety of parts. It contains some steps, some larger arches, some really smaller arches, some keystone shapes, and these parts cover all 4 buildings in the kit, even though they're all mixed together. So it's going to be really important as I follow the instructions to make sure I'm putting the right parts onto the current building so that I don't end up short on a subsequent one. And in the instruction sheet here, you can see that they give the measurements in millimeters. And even though I used to be a pretty good judge of millimeters, I actually got a ruler, and I'm going to measure these before I put them on, just to be sure. So I've taken the time to separate out the 10 small arches that I need for the bell tower, and then the one larger one for the side of the building. And even though I took the time to measure them with my millimeter ruler, what I could tell you is that the line work that you see on the cardboard, the pieces actually line up very good with it. So if you're working on one of these and don't have something to measure with, the darker green lines that they're putting around the archways here, they're a very good match. So the method of attaching all of these tiles is basically going to be the same, whether they be an archway or a regular brick. Everything's going to be attached with this white glue. And these are pretty small. I'm going to use tweezers to hold them into place while they dry. Hopefully this dries pretty quickly. It did when I used it on the cardboard. So let's get started. I'm going to start with the larger archway above the window just to get a feel for how this is going to go together. Wow, so what I can tell you is that sticks the ceramic to the cardboard very quickly. So try to position it correctly when you first put it on. I don't think you're going to have a whole lot of time to work with it. The good news is you don't have to hold it for long to ensure that it stays up. And something else I could tell you is that there's definite imperfections in these ceramic bricks. So you have to look at, make sure you're picking out a smooth side that adheres to the cardboard, but also think about which side's going to be exposed and visible. Now these are, I consider them medieval structures. A lot of them, including this one in the real world, is still standing. You know, when you look at those, the stone is kind of worn. It wasn't perfect to begin with. So this is a case where having a less than perfect surface is acceptable, and everything will end up getting sanded for the finished result anyway. So I've got the larger side archway in place. Let's work on the bell tower next. So I am pretty good at working with small parts, but man, this one's actually proving to be a little challenging for me. I try to go sparingly on the glue because I don't like it oozing out everywhere, but I think I did not put enough glue on that one. Yep, that was the case. And that's like with any kind of modeling, a lot of it is just judgment and experience, so as I go through this, I will learn. Okay, so the application of the archways on the bell tower and the side of the building went pretty well. I learned as I was doing these pairs around the upper level of the bell tower that these arches, again, they're not perfect, and if you pair them up on the table, you know, some you can see them when you put them on the table, that they're thicker or wider or taller. It's best to pair them up on the table to find pairs that match before you glue them to the building. That'll help later with minimizing sanding and just giving it a better, more consistent look. Again, they're not perfect, but in the real world it's stone, and it's an older style of construction, and it's not meant to look absolutely perfect. Okay, so next up are the keystones that are going to go above the main entrance. And for this step you need 6 of them, and there look to be 5, maybe 6 other leftovers of this size in the kit, which I assume go on the other buildings. And what I did was lay out all the ones that I had and try to pick 6 that are closest in size to each other. These seem to have a little bit more variation than these archways did. So I figure these 6 will look like they belong together, and then whatever's left over, wherever it goes, hopefully they'll look like they go together. And some of these are a little misshapen, like this one here. I'm going to sand before I even put onto the model. Just had a ridge that I can tell was not going to sit right on the finished face of the wall. And I did buy a vacuum attachment. When I start getting into the heavy-duty sanding of finished courses and faces of walls, I can tell I'm going to need it. So these should glue on the same way that the others did. I'm going to start with the center and then work towards the outer ones, because I don't want this, you know, if you start at one end and go to the other, you kind of risk it coming out not symmetrical. Okay, and now I have the front arch put on the building. I gotta say I'm not 100% satisfied with it. You can see, because you're trying to make a round shape, but these keystones have square edges. They fan out. They don't necessarily make a tight fit to each other. And this one here, I should have glued the other side to it because it's got a pretty big chip, but I still think the face has to be sanded down. That should remove most of that, but it is what it is. Everything's adhering well. That's the important part. With these stones, I tried to put a little glue between each one because they're not going to have as much else surrounding them as some of the other stones are. But now that part's done and out of the way. That concludes step 3 for this video. And with the next step, I'll be starting to put the first course of bricks all around the base of the building. I hope you'll join me for that. Thank you for watching.